What up? It's your boy back with another video for that ass, man. Another reaction for Blackguard, Way of the Askari, my first fantasy novel about the characters Uzma and Rue going through their training. Well, you got the evil outcast growing stronger in the cut, and then eventually their paths all collide. So this is chapter two. I'm going to listen to it, give my thoughts on the story, on the writing, where I could improve, and on the audio performance of the voice actor. And so, that being said, let's get started. Book chapter two, Black Already Askari. Chapter two, Boar Ambush. Let's go. I am outside. I am at work, mind you. It's a beautiful day, and let's get it going.
2. Wild Boar Ambush. During the tumultuous times of the Blackguard War, it was common knowledge that a person's boko reflected their personality and emotions. It proved to be true when Meta's boko slowly turned white, as he became more and more corrupted. Yarai echoes of boko.
Now, in the prologue, when we did chapter one. Chapter one started with kind of like a memory flashback type thing as Uzuma was meditating, right? Chapter two starts off with this quote from this book by Niarai. Remember, we met Niarai in the prologue. So this is one of her books on Boko, the magic within the world. And, we kind of see that the Askari foundation and how Blackguards go about their way of life is based off of some of these books. And one of the books within the world is called The Way of the Askari. So I got this idea from reading books like The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And I just thought it would be something pretty cool that I could add to my book and to make me look more professional. 'Cause at the end of the day, I mean, I strive for professionalism, but I'm an independent author. I don't have all the resources that someone like Brandon Sanderson might have. And I don't know if I'll ever be as good as I said Brandon Sanderson, but one can hope. And so with that, I just, try to imitate those books that are successful with my books. When people see it and they pick it up and they see how thick it is and they see the lore and how much detail I put into it, they say, oh, this is a real book. You're an independent author, yes, but this is a real book. And that's the vibe I always try to strive for with any of my creations.
The boys trudged through the dense foliage of Nguk Forest, trying not to trip over the gnarled roots that crisscrossed over the soil. Rue used his dull blade to slice through the green labyrinth of branches and shrubbery. Aoife followed closely behind while Uzma walked several feet after them, careful not to lose them under the low-hanging vines and tangled roots.
And remember, we have the two brothers, the two main characters, Uzuma and Ru. We already met them, and we met their homies, Aoife, who was described as being like light skin or fair skin, and being kind of tall, but not as tall as Ru. And then Beatrice, who was described as being short and dark skinned and very intelligent and very full of himself.
Uzma gazed up at the Nguk trees, marveling at their massive trunks, which looked like thick pillars holding up the sky, and their intricate network of roots emerging from the rich black soil like giant serpents. He noticed the wealth of other plants, noting the distinctive shapes and vivid colors of the edible species and the warning hues of their poisonous cousins. They trudged through the dense forest for hours and still had not found what they sought, a way to demonstrate their manhood. Uzma yearned to try out his spell and see if the meditation had helped. Even though levitation was the only spell he knew, he was determined to master it. It was
You see throughout the series or throughout the book how the spells kind of work. They have to use the spells in order for them to get stronger. And so Uzuma, he tries to meditate and concentrate so that way he can get his spellcraft stronger, pretty much.
rumored that powerful blackguards could lift giant rocks and throw them as if they were nothing more than pebbles.
And that line right there comes back on later in the book. So I'm glad I put that in there because Maybe it was autopilot writing, but it does come back later on in the book.
Which kingdom would you like to visit once you have finished training? Beatrice asked. Beatrice was barely 5 feet tall, with deep brown skin and a thin frame. His small stature was deceiving. He was sharp, quick-witted, and confident. A welcome relief to Rue's impulsiveness. He was the kind of friend one could always rely on. To tell you the truth, Uzuma began, but Beatrice cut him off. I think I will take some time to explore. I want to visit the other kingdoms, meet some lovely ladies and other villages, then come back to assume chieftain duties from my father. And if you'd like, you could join me as my war chief. Uzuma was not interested in Askari matters. He had only one thing in his mind. His thoughts were elsewhere, consumed by the night his family died. It was always there. It seemed to be the only thing on his mind. I have no interest in becoming war chief, he said. I plan to hunt down the people who murdered my family. Is that all you want to do with your life? You have the potential to accomplish so much more. It's been my obsession since I was a child. The memories of that day haunt my dreams. I won't be at peace until I avenge those who were taken from me. What about...
Okay, so we see what Uzuma's internal conflict is, or at least one of his internal goals, is that he only wants to become an Askari so he can train, grow, and eventually hunt down the people who destroyed his village. We saw in the first chapter that, that's something that's very traumatic for him. Um, and so, with that being said, he is looking for revenge to find that person who killed his family, because to him it's personal, and not just, oh, they wiped out our village. It's, no, I have to go kill this person. I have to avenge them.
Rue? What about him? Rue glanced over his shoulder at Uzuma and Beatrice, a smug frown resting on his face. If any of you want to take over, you can, he shouted, then resumed slashing the plant life in front of him. A road snaked around the edge of the forest. It provided an easier and safer path, but the boys had no interest in safety. They wanted to prove themselves as men. Uzuma sighed. Rue never had a family, so he doesn't understand either. Maybe you two can go on a journey once you're done at the training grounds. No, he and I don't get along when you're not around. No one gets along with Rue when I'm not around.
Now that's very important for Rue's character as well. Now, I am writing these books with dual protagonists. There are two main characters. Uzuma and Rue are both the main characters. But the difference is that this first book primarily focuses on Uzuma, with Rue being like a supporting character, right, in a supporting role. Even though he does play a huge part within the story, the book mainly revolves around Uzuma's journey. And then when I go into the next book, book two, the Exile Path, that dynamic will switch. The Exile Path will be more focused on Rue, whereas Uzuma serves as the supporting character, even though his story shapes the events of that story. And that's kind of how I'm writing them. So you see that Uzuma had a family, Rue didn't have a family. Uzuma wants revenge, Rue wants to prove himself. But we see that without Uzuma, Rue doesn't really get along with other kids or most people. These are his friends too, but you know, you'll see that in the play as the story goes on.
Rue and Aoife stealthily crept their way through the foliage. Aoife quickly put his finger up to his lips to remind them to be quiet, then motioned them to hunch down and come closer. He nodded toward a nearby bush, and with extreme caution, he parted the branches just enough for them to get a glimpse of two warthogs. They were on their bellies, snouts buried in the muddy ground, plucking succulent grubs from the earth and completely unaware of the boy's presence. The two brown warthogs were of imposing size, at least 4 feet tall, and likely over 70 pounds each. Tusks jutted out from beneath their snouts, with sleek coats of fur, long legs, and strong hooves. They looked intimidating as they let out loud squeals and snorts as they rooted in the dirt for insects, pulled a branch from a nearby tree, and ripped it to shreds in search of any hidden prey. "So, what's the game?" Uzuma asked. "Alive, 20 coins. Dead, 10 coins, Aoife replied. "Hold on. Why would they be worth more alive?" Rue asked. They're hard to catch alive, Aoife pointed out. They can sprint pretty fast. Plus, they don't hesitate to fight back, Beatrice added. In fact, they've been known to kill inexperienced hunters. What? Rue said. Whose idea was it to do this again? Yours, Uzuma answered. Don't tell me you're scared. I'm not scared, Rue replied weakly.
I like these dynamics. Like I said, I'm still growing as an author. This is my first full-length novel. Most of my other books are short stories, and so to have these small little character dynamics where they poke fun at each other, they question each other, they kind of highlight each other's strengths and weaknesses. For me, writing that type of stuff is a lot of fun. Now, one can get overwhelmed writing the stuff and take it too far, but I feel like I keep it nice and sweet. I give you enough to make you invested in the characters, but I don't give you too much to where like it feels like I'm just indulging in writing, witty banter. I try to make it as realistic as possible for the scene that I'm writing.
Aoife raised his broken spear and hurled it toward the warthogs. The sharpened tip grazed the back of one of the pigs' necks, startling them both. Both warthogs bolted off, and the boys chased close behind. Aoife clutched his spear from the ground and ran after them. The warthogs bounded through the forest with powerful, springy strides, weaving around branches and leaping over fallen logs. Rue heaved his blade forward to hit one of the creatures, but the animal twisted in time to evade the weapon. He charged after them with fury, yellow
Ooh,
energy crackling around the
walked into a
blade as he
spider web.
recalled it back to his hands. Uzuma observed how Rue had progressed with his ability to levitate things. He, Aoife, and Beatrice took off after one warthog, while Rue chased the other. Uzuma stopped. Unwilling to let Rue go at it alone, he shouted to Aoife and Beatrice to keep going without him and sprinted to catch up to Rue and the warthog. The warthog bolted through the forest, panting and exhausted, until it reached a dead end at the base of a huge stone boulder. Vines, tufts of grass, and wildflowers covered the boulder's surface. Rue cautiously stepped forward and advanced toward the creature, blade in one hand and yellow boko glowing in the other. Uzuma arrived shortly after, and the two of them blocked the warthog in. They had it.
Walked into a spider web right now. That's funny. But you see, they're chasing the warhol. They're doing this just so they can prove to themselves that they are men. No one set them up for this. No one told them this is something that they had to do. They're just like, hey, we're all about to be men right now. Let's go do something for ourselves. Let's go test ourselves. You know, it's kind of like equivalent of when you turn 18 with your homies, or you turn 21 with your friends or whatever, and you go to the bar or the club for the first time. For them, this is it. They're about to go out here. They're about to try to get these warhols. This is going to lead to one of the first interactions with the different type of outcasts within the world of the Askari.
Trapped. The animal let out a high-pitched squeal and reared up on its hind legs, ready to charge. Its black eyes glinted with fear and defiance as it saw Rue and prepared to pounce. Just as it leapt forward, a spear shot out of the sky, narrowly missing Rue, and impaled it right through the head, pinning it to the ground in an instant. The beast thrashed erratically for a few seconds before succumbing to death. "What?" Rue said. "Thanks," a voice from above them replied. "I was searching for my next meal, and you delivered it to me." A young boy in tattered black clothing descended from the branches of a nearby tree. He had been waiting in a tree branch above. A dark scarf concealed his face, leaving only his eyes exposed, and a necklace of crudely strung animal bones with a small human skull dangled at its center. "Look, fellas," he said, as two more shadowy figures descended from the trees, their faces hidden beneath black scarves. They also adorned necklaces made from bones, but the skulls were missing.
Hot out here.
Roos stood beside Uzuma. "You took my kill, outcast." One outcast sneered, their voice low and menacing. "So? It's not the only thing we'll take from you."
I gotta admit, I do not like how the voice actor says that line. That's not the only thing we take from you. I would have preferred it. He did it a little bit more menacing, but you gotta understand these are all teenagers. These outcasts that they're encountering, they're only responding to them like this because they can kind of see that, oh, you're no older than me. We're probably the same age. So that's why Rue and Uzuma are kind of more smug about it, or at least Rue. He's more smug about it than being more cautious. 'Cause he's like, oh, man, these some little kids, man. What the heck? Like, I'm a little kid. And so, I forgot where I was going, but oh, the line. I really hate, well, hate's not the right word. I just really dislike how he says that line. I just wish it would have been a little bit stronger. 'Cause I feel like it comes off weak and it makes the outcast sound um, not as intimidating as I wanted them to sound. But I mean, they are teenagers, so maybe that's what he was going for. I don't know, but I just feel like the line could have been said a little bit.
His cohorts nodded in agreement. What are you calves doing out here anyway? Don't you know these parts of Nguk Forest are dangerous? A menacing growl escaped the young outcast's lips as he pulled his spear from the warthog's neck. He was far smaller than Rue and Uzuma, but his presence held an unshakable gravity. Uzuma
Now, I don't know why I decided to make this outcast smaller than both of them, but I feel like maybe that's because of some of the experience I had growing up. I grew up in Compton, California. I grew up in a hood called Nutty Block, and I was always one of the tallest people around. And a lot of people who would you consider like the bullies, or the tough guys were always way shorter than me. So that might have been why I made this person so short. Just for that contrast that sometimes strength or bravado doesn't always come from the biggest person. It can come from somebody who's short too. And they say like a lot of people or short men in general have an Napoleon complex. I don't know. I'm just saying that was the kind of idea I went into when I designed this character. You got to remember, I did write this book 3 years ago.
felt his body get tense. The skull on the outcast's necklace was a symbol of death, a reminder
The skulls on the necklace. So there's a group of outcasts that refer to themselves as skull hunters. And in order to be a skull hunter, you have to kill people. Most outcasts are just blackguards who want to use their vocal but don't want to be in the Askari. So they kind of just become outcasts, criminals by default. They're like, you know what? We don't want to be a part of society. We just gonna do our own thing. We get caught, but we just gonna do our own thing. And that's kind of how they live their lives. You know what I'm saying? They still might, you know, participate in society here and there. For the most part, they basically live off the grid, so to speak. And so you do have some outcasts who are just full-fledged criminals. They don't care. They will kill you outright. They'll rob. They'll steal. They'll pillage. They'll do all that stuff. So skull hunters are a particularly bad group because um, they encourage killing. You know, and they display these killings by wearing the skulls of those who they killed. You know, you start off as a skull wearer, a younger skull hunter. And you might have one or two, you know, or three skulls on your necklace. But as you get older and as you kill more, you gain more skulls, and you eventually become a full-fledged skull hunter. Because it's all about showing off that you don't care, that you will kill whether you have to or not. That's the whole point of the skull hunters. And they're not like a huge gang. Most of them operate independently. But a skull hunter might take younger outcasts into his ranks and have them be skull wearers so that way they can become skull hunters too. So that's how it works.
that this young man had killed before and would kill again. Calves? Rue said. You dung shepherds have the audacity to call us calves? Red Boko pulsed with wicked intent around the second outcast's hands as he pointed towards Rue.
Now we see this red Boko for the first time in the story. It's usually aligns with like people who are passionate, people who are quick to anger, um, people who not really desire, but it's more like passion, anger, lust, stuff like that. Those are gonna be the ones who are red. I can't think of all the descriptors off my mind, but if you read the Askari lexicon at the end of the book, it goes into more detail. But typically, those are going to be like the red vocal users, which are typically some of the main blackguards. They're going to be red. They're going to be blue. I mean, I say glue. Huh. They're going to be red. They're going to be blue, and there's going to be some green, and typically like a yellow. The more rare ones are like purple, white, black, and orange. Orange is like desire. So as we run into the other colors, I'll explain them. But you kind of feel like this is a young, angry kid, so his vocal is red.
Mr. Snarl curled at the corners of his lips as he hissed. You'd better think twice before you say another word, or I'll tear your tongue from your throat. Rue inched forward, but Uzuma's iron grip held his arm in place. Tension crackled in the air as the third outcast growled and slowly unsheathed a blade. The sharp glint of steel filled the air with a sense of dread. "Come on, Rue," Uzuma urged, his voice tight with tension. He knew they could fight off the outcast, but he wasn't sure how many more lurked in the shadows. He did not know what had become of Aoife and Beatrice. Had they encountered outcasts as well? Despite being trained by Baku and Askari elite, he knew these outcasts were dangerous.
Now you see kind of like Uzuma's thinking. You see why he is a blue Boko wielder, because he thinks before he reacts. He takes everything in. He's like, okay, what's going on here? I'm here with my brother. I don't know where the other homies are because we got separated chasing these wild boars. And even though we can probably beat them because we've been trained by Baku, one of the best Blackguards, Askaris out there, or Askari Blackguards out there, these kids still dangerous. One of them is a skull wearer. Like, what the heck? I'm not taking my chances.
They were young, reckless, fearless, and posed a grave threat to him and his friends. Rue shot Uzuma a smirk. "Fine," he said, pointing at the skull-wearing outcast. "I'll fight you for it."
And we see Rue's like bravado and arrogance, and we see why he's yellow at the start of this story, because he's really arrogant and rash, and he's kind of irrational. You know, he just like, man, that was our kill. Y'all took it, so this is what we're gonna do. To see who really was about to get the kill, because remember, Rue and Uzma chased this wild boar into this little corner. To see who really about to get the kill, we're gonna run the fade for it. You know what I'm saying? If you really about that, you gotta beat me in a fight. And even though this dude has skulls hanging from his neck, Rue don't care. Because Rue is confident in his abilities that he'll beat him, even though he don't even know this dude. So you kind of see the difference between Rue and Uzuma. You get Uzuma's frame of thought as he knows that a fight is probably going to happen, and then you get Rue like, nah, this fight is happening, bro, one way or another.
A crazed chuckle echoed from the outcast. "Fight me! I got the kill." Typical of a dung-fly, the skull-wearer hurled the spear towards Rue with a deathly intent. He darted to the side, narrowly escaping the sharpened spear that cut through the air and flew past him.
Remember, the other skull wearer who's holding the stick, who was holding up the boko in the red boko, was like, "Hey, you disrespect us one more time, we gonna get it cracking." And then Rue just dissed him again. So now the short guy with the spear, he just flung that thing.
A sphere of red energy crackled and flew towards him, but he held up his arm and with a yell of defiance released a vibrant blast of yellow boko from his palm. The two forces collided, creating an explosion of sparks and flames before fading away. The third outcast viciously swung his sword at Uzuma, but he expertly deflected each strike. With a swift and powerful motion, Uzuma whipped his sword around, sending the blade of the outcast spiraling toward the sky. He wasted no time, kicking the outcast hard in the chest before snatching the sword as it plummeted back toward the ground, and pressing both blades against the outcast's throat. "Yield!" Uzuma demanded. "Please don't kill me," the young outcast begged. The skull-wearer dashed to get his spear while the Blackguard outcast and Rue exchanged blasts of boko, neither having the advantage. Rue leaped to the side as a red blast flew towards him, and in one swift motion lunged forward, slashing the outcast Blackguard in both arms with a flurry of strokes. The outcast howled as Rue unleashed a brutal blast of yellow boko, striking him in the chest. He crashed to the ground, clutching his chest, writhing in agony. Uzuma and Rue both spun round to confront the skull-wearer, who now...
They just took out two of them with ease, as you can see. Uzuma, he used the sword, boom, boom, bing, knocked the other dude's sword in the air, caught it, kicked him to the ground, had the swords at his neck, like, hey, bro, look, I don't want to kill you. Like, chill out. You know what I'm saying? And that dude was like, all right, man, I give up. I fold. I yield. Uzuma was having a little exchange. I mean, not Uzuma, Rue was having an exchange with the other Blackguard, shooting the energy balls, the blasting spells. And then he ended up getting the advantage, hit dude in the chest, boom. It was like a punch, knocked dude down. Now they just have the one with the spears.
brandished his spear. He lunged at Rue, who blocked the attack but stumbled backward from the force. Not missing a beat, the outcast spun his weapon in a deadly arc toward Uzuma. Uzuma instinctively ducked, but the strike caught Rue in the leg, tripping him. Uzuma
When I write these fight scenes, I try to visualize the scene in my head and get a good idea where every character is, just so that way there is a good frame for when I'm writing the scene. Everything kind of makes sense. Like I try to visualize it as if I'm in the scene, and I try to visualize it from like a top-down perspective. Like where's every character at, and how are they moving across this board? Kind of like a chessboard. If you're looking at a chessboard from the top down, where are these pieces at, and where do they go, and how are they moving across the board? That's kind of how I try to write the fight scenes. Sometimes I do mess up, and I forget that a character got knocked down, or a character, something got hit, and I'll forget that small detail. But for the most part, I try to be as consistent as possible.
leapt forward with his two blades, hoping to land a strike, but the skull-wearer used the long shaft of the spear to keep him away. Rue sprang to his feet, and together with Uzuma, charged the skull-wearer. However, the outcast was not completely untrained, and had met each of their movements with quick blocks and precise attacks. His wide stances kept them at bay as he parried their attacks.
Now you see why he got those skulls. He's not just some jabroni out here with a spear. He's trained. He's fighting two people at once and basically holding his own against both of them.
Uzuma hurled a sword at the skull-wearer, but he deflected it to the ground. Uzuma's gaze was drawn to a massive rock about the size of a human head. He thrust out his hand and imbued the rock with a wave of blue boko. With one powerful motion, he heaved the rock into the skull-wearer's chest. He crumpled on impact, and the spear flew from his grasp. Rue snatched the spear from midair as the skull-wearer collapsed with a heavy gasp and clutched his chest in agony. "And you calves thought you had a chance against me."
And then you see they work together. They defeated him. He had no chance. But you see, Uzuma, I mean not Uzuma, Rue, he gotta talk his shit. Oh man, you thought you got a chance against me? I'm that guy. He had to talk his shit, man. And that is these first two chapters regarding Uzuma and Rue and their homies is just to show you like how they are as characters, you know, who they are, their personalities at the start of the story and the world that they live in. So that way you can get a good feel for each one.
Rue sneered. "Don't mock them, Rue," Uzuma said. "Why not? They would kill us if we were not trained in combat." Rue was right. That one skull-wearer could have added 2 more skulls to his collection, or let one of the other outcasts earn their skulls.
And you see, that's what makes them brothers. Even though Rue is still arrogant about beating these outcasts, who they clearly could have died to. Mind you, this is like a real fight. It's not like they're just sparring. Uzma has to admit that, hey, look, you're right. If we wasn't trained, they probably would have killed us. You know what I'm saying? If it was Aoife and Beatrice they ran into, they probably would have killed them.
The thought filled him with disgust and unease. He loathed outcasts. They leeched off society, terrorizing the innocent and murdering indiscriminately. Despite the presences of the Askari, there were always more outcasts. "Grab the warthog and let's go find the others," Uzuma said. "Filthy dregs," Rue said. Then they both stopped as a loud clap resonated nearby. Emerging from the thicket of bushes was an intimidating figure adorned in all black, with an array of skulls that dangled around his neck. A sinister scar descended through his right eye as a veil of dark fabric obscured the lower half of his face. A curved scimitar hung crookedly at his waist, its steel stained red with dried blood. "I see you defeated my men." Crimson Boko cascaded from his hands as he used it to rip the spear from Rue's grip. Rue stared aghast at his empty hand, then glanced from Uzuma to the outcast in disbelief. The crimson hue of his red Boko covered their blades, and with one swift pull he cast their weapons to the ground at his feet.
Now you see, another skull hunter has appeared, and he appears to be the leader of the other three. It's like, oh, I see you killed my men. And with ease, he uses his bow to disarm them. And I wrote this scene to display the power dynamics of someone who's been using Boko for a long time versus Ruin Uzuma who hasn't been using it for that long. It shows you the gradual increase of power and the power difference between certain Boko users. And so, with that being said, you see how easily he's able just to snatch their weapons from their hands.
These will be of no use. He strolled up to the desperate young outcast who had pleaded for Uzuma not to kill him. The Skull Hunter thrust the spear right into the young outcast without hesitation. A bloody cough escaped from his lips as he desperately tried to speak through clenched teeth before he ceased moving. Pathetic.
And you see how easily he just killed one of his own men? The dude that had yielded to Uzuma just moments earlier, he just took the spear and just boom, took him out. Like, and looked at him like pathetic. Bro, you begging for your life? Like, what? We skull hunters.
Skull Hunter said. Uzuma gulped something down, fighting the trembling in his legs as his courage waned. This was fear.
That's the end of the chapter. As you can see, when they fought the three young outcasts, it wasn't really fear, but it was more like adrenaline. But as they see this dude kill somebody effortlessly without any hesitation, without any qualms or anything, then that's when Uzuma starts to feel a little fear. He feels it hitting his body. And so I think a bee just flew into my forehead. Maybe he thought I was a flower. Uh, this is one of the first scenes that I created when I first started the book. And initially, it was supposed to go a little different. They were supposed to be like captured and in cages, then they escape, and they fight their way out through this like gang or whatever. But I feel like this works a little bit better. It's a little bit stronger. As I developed the story over time, the world became more established. So like Seoul Garnis, the whole like country in itself, um, is lush with different forages. Wow, I cannot speak today. It's lush with different forests and different jungles. And so you have a lot of like trees and canopies of trees and stuff like that, and all kind of stuff. So once I developed the world, I felt like making the scene more contained within one of these jungles, uh, making the scene more contained within one of these jungles fit the story a lot better. And instead of having like a whole gang, it just limited to three outcasts, one skull wearer, and then up in the ante with the skull hunter. And one of the inspirations for this scene actually came from Naruto when they fought. I think the character's name is Zabuza, the dude that had the big sword that they fought like early in the beginning. He was one of the inspirations for this whole scene, that whole arc when they fought him in the water or whatever. And so that's it, chapter two. Let me know if you liked it in the comments below. Go ahead, like and subscribe, do all that good stuff for your boy, and cop Blackguard Way of the Askari on Amazon. Make sure you pick up the prelude, Blackguard to Echoes of Defiance. Echoes of Defiance, the comic book will be dropping this fall. It's almost done. So let's get it cracking, y'all. Till next time.